Today we'll talk about high adventure planning for Troop 386 for the coming year. Exactly what is high adventure? Well, it's our regular monthly campout on steroids. We can do activities that are beyond the younger boys' abilities. Why should we do high adventure? Well, first off, it's a challenge. It's only through meeting greater and greater challenges that we reach personal growth. They almost always require teamwork and leadership. Ultimately, we can fill out our scouting bucket list, but at the same time, we want to have fun. So who can go? Well, adults and scouts are welcome. You have to be old enough, though. This isn't for the young boys. For the most part, if you're 14 years old, then you're old enough for a high adventure trip. Also, if you're an 8th grader graduating and are at least 13, then you make the cut. Exactly what can we do on a high adventure trip? Well, the Boy Scouts have 3 dedicated high adventure bases, Philmont being the best known. We've also taken crews to Florida Sea Base in the Keys and to Northern Tier in Minnesota and southern Canada. There are regional bases, such as Diamond H within our own council, and we can do a custom trip, such as our planned trip this year, where we can fill out our bucket list. The calendar offers many opportunities for doing high adventure. They typically take some extra time. October has the fall break. Winter break is another option. Spring break and summer are more commonly used. Currently, we have 2 events planned on our high adventure calendar. That is this summer, sea kayaking in the San Juan Islands of Washington, and next year, going to Philmont. Let's talk a bit more about Philmont. This really is the crown jewel of the Boy Scout high adventure bases. It is located in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in northern New Mexico. This is a 12-day long backpacking trip, 10 of which are on the trail. At the end of each day of backpacking, there are camps where we can participate in various activities, such as rifle shooting, gold mining, spar pole climbing, fishing, mountain biking. The list goes on and on. The dates for this trip are the 12th through the 24th of June in 2014. For this year, we put together a team of more experienced boys to do the planning for our custom trip. Each one of them selected a really great option and developed it as a plan. We looked at sea kayaking, fishing in Alaska, backpacking in Wyoming, hiking in California along the John Muir Trail, and backpacking in Colorado. After evaluating these options, we selected the sea kayaking. This is a unique part of the country, right along the northwest corner of the continental United States. This is an area of relatively protected water and land called the San Juan Islands, tucked in between the Vancouver Island in Canada, the Olympic Range, and the continental part of Washington. Here's a Google Maps picture where you can see that though there are several large islands, there are myriad smaller islands included in the San Juans. why go here? Follow this link and you'll get an idea. This link is a promotional video put together by the outfitter we plan to use to rent our kayaks in the San Juan Islands. It gives you a taste of what we'll see when we're out there. Safety is a major concern. It can be very intimidating kayaking around a 4-ton animal like the orca. But it turns out that orca are very safe to kayak around, as there have not been injuries related to orca and kayakers. State law requires that we maintain a separation of 200 meters, both to not disturb the animals and to maintain our safety. The biggest risk is not from the animals that we'll see there, but it's from the environment itself, the sun, the waves, the wind, and the tides. Part of what will make it safe will be our preparation ahead of time, both learning to become a good kayaker ahead of time, preparing for the trip and learning about the tides and the wind, and most importantly, strictly adhering to Boy Scout guidelines for safe water-based activity. Here's our proposed itinerary. This is an 8-day trip. On day 1, we'll fly from Oklahoma City to Seattle. Once there, we'll rent a car. We'll have a little bit of time to tour downtown Seattle and arrange for food for our trip. Stop by the local REI to pick up some fuel for our backpacking stoves and head out to our first campsite in the Cascades. On day 2, we'll take a side trip to the Boeing factory in Everett, Washington, which is the largest manufacturing facility in the world. From there, we'll head up to catch the ferry out to the San Juan Islands and camp on the island itself. The next morning, we'll show up at our outfitters bright and early to rent our kayaks. We'll depart from Friday Harbor and explore a number of smaller islands on our way to Jones Island. On day 4, we'll explore a number of the islands on the northern tip of the San Juans and camp at Stewart Island. Day 5 includes more exploration along the west side of San Juan Island, right along what many term the Orca Highway. This is where we're most likely to see orca in the wild. The final day will be a trek back around the island to turn in our kayaks at Friday Harbor. Day 7 will be our optional guided fishing trip. Following that, we'll drive back to Seattle and stay in a hotel so that we can get up bright and early, catch our flight back home. Here is a picture version of of our itinerary. First day, landing and camping. Second day, stopping at Boeing, then making our way to the ferry, and ultimately to Friday Harbor on San Juan Island. After that, we'll have our multi-day kayaking trip. Note that on the left edge of San Juan Island, the west side, is the area we're most likely to be able to see orca. Some call it the Orca Highway. The next day is when our fishing trip will take place. That's a half-day trip, and after that we'll make our way back to Seattle, spend the night, get cleaned up so they'll let us on a plane, and take off the next morning. This is our budget for the trip. Ultimately, it gets kind of expensive because we have to fly out there and we have to rent a car once we get there. That takes about half the cost. Ultimately, about $1,150, including the optional fishing trip. about $150 less if we choose to not do that. Our payment schedule will be an initial deposit of $200. Following that, everybody will pay their own airfare once we decide on our specific arrangements. And then finally, pay the residual toward the end of May. The boys aren't just going on a trip, they're taking part in an expedition, and everybody has a responsibility. We will have boys with responsibility for each of these areas. One will research the flora and fauna so we can be more keen observers of what's going on around us. One will work on routing. We'll confirm that the plan we have is a good plan. We'll look at campsites, study the tide charts, and come up with a schedule for when we should travel to take maximal advantage of the tides. Another will work on side excursions, such as the Boeing trip and our activities in Seattle. And finally, one of the boys will take the lead on setting up local training so that we make our way to Washington as trained kayakers. These are the scheduled drivers that I see. School is out May 22nd. We could go any time after that. We do want to pay attention to summer camp. If we want to fish while we're out there, salmon season starts the 1st of July, and Dungeness crab season starts in mid-July. Some of you may be involved in Jamboree, and that's the 15th through the 24th of July. And finally, our band members have to get back and hit it pretty hard right at the beginning of August. The bottom line, though, is whoever wants to go on the trip will try and work around your schedules so that we can have a good group going. Let's get out and go.